Welcome back. All right, yeah, the sun is providing weird lighting right now in my room. It's fine. Anyways, I want to talk about the Minnesota Wild today. Yep, why not? The Minnesota Wild are sitting at a record of 16-4-4. But that's not the important thing for this video. The important thing for this video is taking a look at just how the Minnesota Wild have navigated a really tough issue financially, and we'll talk about how those financial issues should get better next year. So Bill Guerin's been the general manager of this team dating back to August 21st of 2019. And at times his job has been criticized, at times he has been praised. And I understand the criticism. I also understand the praise. So we'll go through where the criticism has been, and we'll talk about the future with this team too. John Hynes has been the coach since November 27th of last year. And while there were many detractors when he was brought in as head coach, I think he's done a very good job, and this season definitely shows it. They look like a playoff team at the very least, and then we get into the other discussion of, well, they don't go very far in the playoffs. So we'll look at their playoff history a little bit here. 2003, they made it all the way to the conference finals. That's right near their first year in the league, and the reality is they weren't able to replicate what they did in 2003, and they haven't been back to the conference finals since, and they haven't been out of the first round since 2015. So it's easy at this point in time to look at Minnesota's record and point to previous seasons where they've been pretty darn good and say, well, they were really good that year and what happened. And I do expect people to have that attitude towards Minnesota this year, and until that success arrives, that could be the case. But Minnesota could be a lot of fun over the next couple of years. 2008 is the only year that they've won their division. That was the Northwest Division. That's how far back we're looking. That's almost 20 years ago now. So yeah, not a lot of success regular season, postseason. They've been pretty good to mediocre over, I would say, the last 10 years. They've been pretty good at times, mediocre others. And so it is kind of easy to overlook them a bit when you're looking at the standings. And it's frustrating for me sometimes, and especially, covering as much as I do, when I'm watching the talking heads in the studio about talking. And I mean like your normal talking heads, not the band The Talking Heads. But you see them in the studio talking about which teams are contenders, which teams are doing well, and I'm usually left talking to the screen about, you guys forgot, why did you not talk about this team? This team's doing really well. Why did nobody even brought them up? And Minnesota's one of those teams that can happen with, where it might be easy to look at the Central Division and go, well, Dallas has a shot at the Cup. If Colorado figures out their goaltending, they have a shot at the Cup. Winnipeg's had a fantastic run, a little bit tougher lately, but they have the goaltending, the forwards, the defense. Yeah, they could win the Stanley Cup. And that's it for the contenders in the Central. And people would nod and go, yeah, that's about it. So Minnesota's up against it in terms of how they're viewed, for a reason that looks at their playoff history. You can see why, and just recent history where they've had good regular seasons and just fallen short in the playoffs. But financially, this team's going to get themselves out of a bit of a boondoggle they've had for years. When Bill Guerin bought out both Parise and Suter, there were a lot of detractors. And at the time, it was something that people kind of understood. I know that Jesse Pierce was the first one I saw that was kind of ahead on the reporting of this. And if anybody isn't following Jesse Pierce or the Bar Down Beauties podcast, I'm telling you, you're missing out. Because you get a lot of information in Minnesota, and they just seem so delightful and down to earth. But the one thing to keep in mind is that while there's been all that criticism about the buyouts and what financial position to put the Minnesota Wild in, their cap penalty this year is $14.75 million. Next season it drops substantially. It's down to $1.67 million. So this vice that's been around their salary cap situation, where it's like, no, you do not have the money to spend, other teams do, goes away next year, mostly. 1.67 million, comparatively speaking, with other teams in the league. Even look around the league right now, having about 2 million in cap space isn't that uncommon. The cap ceiling is also expected to go up substantially next year. 92.5 million is seen as the likely number, but the NHL and the union are discussing maybe pushing it higher, maybe going beyond that. I think it's a 5% limit on how much the cap can go up, and saying, you know what, we can push that higher. And so there's a real discussion to be had about whether or not maybe it'll be 93, maybe 95. And so you're adding $4.5 million in cap space to every team in the league if it's 92.5 million. But the Minnesota Wild are also getting about 13 million in cap space on top of that $4.5 million. So that's about $17.5 million. You could buy a pretty nice player for $17.5 million. And Minnesota's in a position too where they don't have to worry too much about upcoming free agent contracts. So Kaprizov, $9 million cap hit for him till 2026. He'll get a raise, but not this summer. It'll be next summer. And the expectation is the cap goes up next year and probably goes up further the year after. Boldy, $7 million cap hit till 2030. I think that's a bargain for a guy who's around a point per game. I'll go that far. Boldy's a fantastic player. Eriksson Ek, $5.25 million cap hit till 2029. That's a bargain for Eriksson Ek. And I will go back to Kaprizov and say at $9 million for what he's doing for them. Other players are getting 11.5, 12 million for doing as much or less than what Kaprizov is right now in the NHL. So those contracts are very good. And then you've got Zuccarello at 4.13 million until 2026. He has great chemistry with Kaprizov, and it's a little over $4 million to get that chemistry. It's a masterclass, really, by Bill Guerin there. So, yes, there's the cap penalty that hurts, but he's managed to get guys to sign. And keep in mind that Minnesota, pretty sure it's now one of those tax-free states. So that's impressive. That's an impressive feat by a general manager in the Minnesota market. Then you got Foligno at $4 million until 2028. There were some eyebrows raised when he got $4 million a year. But honestly, it hasn't really hurt the team at this point. He's a veteran player. He's a leader. Hartman, $4 million till 2027. At times you get the production with Hartman. At times you don't. But he is a solid top 6/top 9 option for them. Trenin at $3.5 million till 2028. It has not worked out with Yakov Trenin at this point with Minnesota, but at a $3.5 million cap hit, it's not awful. It's not an awful cap hit. So, I mean, there's always the chance that after this season, Guerin goes, my bad, and buys him out. But at $3.5 million for the cap hit, even the buyout penalty doesn't necessarily hurt the team so much going into next season. Freddie Gaudreau, $2.1 million cap hit till 2028. I think that's a bargain for what Gaudreau brings. I do. Johansson, $2 million cap hit for this year, and then he's a UFA next summer. Probably in his last year in Minnesota. Johansson's been kind of quiet, but at $2 million, he's not hurting your team either. His cap hit doesn't dictate he's supposed to be scoring a whole bunch more points than what he's been getting so far. Now, the restricted free agents next summer, you've got Kuznetsov. He's not going to get a huge raise next summer. Just probably a 2-year deal. Rossi will get a raise, and it will be interesting to see if Bill Guerin sits down and figures something out with Rossi during the season here, or if they wait till the season's done. I would think Rossi's asking price just probably keeps going up during the season, to be honest, especially once we get confirmation on that salary cap increase. Rossi's asking price could go up. And then you got Lauko. Lauko's still an RFA next summer, but he's not going to get a huge raise either. So Rossi's the one who's going to eat into the money that they have to spend, but not a lot. It's not going to cripple their ability to go out and add a free agent should they choose to do so. On the blue line, you got Spurgeon at $7.58 million till 2027. He's had trouble with staying healthy, but when he's in the lineup, he's worth every penny. Brodin at $6 million might be underpaid. 2028's when his contract is up, so he's at $6 million for a while. Middleton, $4.35 million till 2029. And in all honesty, when they signed Middleton to the extension at that cap hit, I thought it was too high. I did not think that Middleton was a $4.35 million a year defenseman, but this year his production is up, and he's definitely playing worth that contract. Bogosian, $1.25 million till 2026. Merrill, $1.2 million contract that expires this year. Chisholm at $1 million. His contract expires this year as well. And Faber signed for $8.5 million till 2033. So Faber, you do not have to worry about for almost a decade. You don't have to worry about Kaprizov for the next couple of years. Eriksson Ek and Boldy are signed for a long time. There's some good certainty here. Then you got Gustafsson in net. And Jiricek is a restricted free agent next summer. So between now and then, Jiricek might make himself a much more expensive option. No idea. Gustafsson, $3.75 million cap hit till 2026. I'll say that's a bargain this year. It seemed a bit high last year. He had struggles last year. And Fleury, his final year of his contract, his final year of his career, $2.5 million cap hit this year. And so you got Wallstead, who's going to be coming up and playing as the backup next year. He's not a restricted free agent until 2027. So there's some good certainty with the Minnesota Wild when it comes to their their salary structure beyond this season. Anybody who's expiring this summer, you've got Merrill, you've got Chisholm, you've got Johansson, right? He pronounces it Johansson. Just Swedes like to mess with us. But Liljegren, who's doing that? Anyways, I do, and then people are like, hey, he's pronouncing it that way because that's how he wants it said. It's like Marshawn went to him and said, troll everybody. So there's nobody whose contract's expiring this summer that's going to be overly expensive to replace or overly expensive to re-sign. Minnesota's in an excellent position going forward to add. And I would think that it would be a forward they would add. So we'll jump down here for a moment. Now, potential free agents next summer who could be fascinating options for the Wild. Mitch Marner. Marner, of course, is going to be pricey. Minnesota might be one of the teams that can afford him the dollar amount he'd be looking for. Sure, they might have to move some other money around to make it work, but they could absolutely afford to add Marner. And if that's the only thing they would do this summer, that could be a substantial addition for them and really build up that top six. Brock Boeser. There have been rumors about Boeser tied to Minnesota for a long time. And while those rumors have definitely died down, and rightfully so, Boeser is going to be looking for a raise this coming summer. And I don't know, maybe the Canucks won't have the money to give him the raise, and maybe he ends up going to Minnesota after all, right? Boeser, 30 to 40 goal scorer, as long as he can stay healthy. And Minnesota could use another one of those. And Nick Ehlers is a potential unrestricted free agent from the Jets if they don't get him re-signed. And I think Ehlers would fit right in with what they're doing in Minnesota. Really good, a little bit of a hard-nosed player as well. And I think Ehlers would be a really, really good addition for Minnesota. And those are just three I wanted to mention. I left out defensemen because I feel like their defense is pretty good now and into the future, and they don't need a goaltender. So all of that money they have, in my opinion, what they'll be looking for is to bulk up at the forward group and just really show, hey, we feel like we can do something here. And then what you're doing is you're telling guys like Kaprizov, Boldy, Eriksson, etc., I think we can win. I think there's something here, and it should inspire them into next season and beyond as well. So looking at their all-time leaders, this is a franchise that has had some struggles with scoring over the many years they've been around. Gaborik's their all-time leading scorer with 219, but Kaprizov is 175, so he'll get there. All-time assist leaders, Mikko Koivu at 504. Spurgeon's the closest to reaching that at 281. It's going to take a couple years for Spurgeon to get there, I would think. Points, all-time leader is Koivu at 709. It's going to take some time for Kaprizov to get there. He's at 368. But if he can score at a 100-point pace from now until when he breaks that mark, he probably 3 years, 4 years. And then wins leader all-time is Backstrom at 194. That's going to stay for quite some time because at this point, Gustafson's just got 53 wins. So no danger of the 194 wins being eclipsed anytime soon. But the single season records are all Kaprizov. 47 goals, 61 assists, 108 points, and power play goals 19. All of that is Kaprizov, and at $9 million per season for this year and next year, that's a pretty solid superstar player to have signed for, again, I would say below market value, especially with the salary cap going up substantially next summer. I think this is a team to watch. I think this might finally be that time. And I do apologize to Minnesota fans because it does feel like there have been other times in this channel's existence where I've said this might be the year. Like there was the 16-game winning streak they had all those years back. Then there was a couple years ago, they were first in the division until late, and they looked really, really good, and I thought might be the time. But with their financial situation getting a lot better, and their contract situation being pretty darn good, I don't see any reason why Minnesota shouldn't be a contender for the foreseeable future if they play this right. And it could tell quite a tale if they do play this right, and they end up finally getting a championship. It'd be great to see Minnesota win a title. It would. I'm not a Minnesota Wild fan. My wife is, and it would be great to see them win a Stanley Cup. It'd be nice to see her team win a Stanley Cup. So it's either them or Winnipeg. And then if it's a team that make both of us happy, it'd have to be Vancouver, but that sounds crazy. So, yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below on the state of the Minnesota Wild. and their financial situation? And do you feel like this year's team might be able to do more than just have a great regular season? Do you think they might be able to do something in the playoffs? I think the potential is there. I think it's going to be really tough with the Central Division, though. I think Colorado's going to figure out the goaltending between now and the end of the regular season. And I think Winnipeg's still going to be really tough come playoff time based on the exit they had in the first round last year. And then you got Dallas, too. So it is a tough division they're in. And that's a conversation to be had as well. If they played in the Pacific Division, will we be talking about playoff success for them a little bit more than we've talked about since they're in the Central Division? You guys can let me know your thoughts on that or the state of Minnesota in general in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support as always. I will talk to you again soon.